And the subject matter today, of course, is marketing, mainly. And we're asking the simple question, what makes great advertising? We're simply asking the question, what makes great advertising this afternoon? And thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you could think back of some of South Africa's, best adverts. Think of the days of the drumming flavors of Oros. Or who could, remember the days of, I want to be a Simba Chippy. Perhaps you are one of those people that sang, I want to be a Simba Chippy. Or those great advert, Baker's Biscuits advert in the 90s, perhaps. You might even have nostalgia in remembering that one. Or Sasol's great Glug adverts that turned out to eventually name a football team in one of our football teams. Some of the great memories of some of our greatest advertising. Or perhaps Wimpy's I love it when you talk foreign. Remember that one? I love it when you talk foreign. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. We're asking ourselves the simple question, what makes great advertising? What makes great advertising? Well, at this moment in time, it's not, my place to really give you a warm welcome. I'd like to afford this opportunity to Dr. Yvonne Saini, who's the director of the MM in Strategic Marketing, which is a two-year master's program that is hosted by Wits Business School. Dr. Saini, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Please do give your guests a warm welcome, if you may.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're welcome to our first marketing talk in 2022. You are welcome that this program is being run by WBS at Wits Business School. And I'm the senior lecturer at Wits Business School and also the director for Masters in Management in Strategic Marketing. So some of you might be able to want to proceed to come and do your masters. You are welcome. And let's enjoy this talk that we're going to have. And of course, we're all going to learn from each other. You are welcome to Wits Business School marketing talk. And then I'm going to hand over to Mr. Dube. He's going to be the host for this program. Mr. Dube, you can take over.
Thank you so much, Doc. Much appreciated. Thank you so much, Doc. I always have to be nice to her. She was my master supervisor, so I've got to be nice to her in case I have any dreams of a PhD. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, to unpack this great topic, I've got a couple of guests with me. My first guest this afternoon is the CNBC All Africa Young Business Leader of the Year in 2017. Sylvester Chauke has had an illustrious career holding the national marketing title for Nando's South Africa and Director of Marketing and Communications at the broadcasting giant MTV Networks. In 2012, Sylvester established DNA Brand Architects as the founder and the chief architect and has collected prestigious award accolades in 10 years of existence since. He was a winner of the ICCO World's Best PR Campaign in 2019, IABC Best of the Best 2019, Mark Live's Most Admired Agency in 2020, Adweek Top 100 Fastest Growing Agency in the World in 2020, and Prism Agency of the Year in 2021. The agency has over 74 awards and counting, and he continues to work with the host of many great and revered brands like Apple, MTV Base, BET, Comedy Central, First National Bank, SA Breweries, and many others. And of course, he's a passionate advocate for creativity, a member of the Advisory Council for the World Economic Forum, Global Shapers Board, member of State Theatre, top 100 influential South Africans in 2018, and author of Stand Against the Ban. And in 2020, I know DNA Brand Architects, according to Kantar, produced the best ad. We're going to talk about that ad, Sylvester. And thank you for joining us and welcome, Sylvester.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. Our next guest is Johanna McDowell, founder and chief executive officer of the independent agency Selection and managing partner of Scope in Africa. Johanna McDowell's illustrious career has spanned over 4 decades, as well as both sides of agency client fence in South Africa and internationally. With directorships in advertising agencies in both the UK and South Africa, McDowell was appointed the managing director of Gray Phillips Advertising in 1988. It is a robust experience across the advertising and marketing sector that has brought McDowell to where her commentary and guidance on industries is valued in South Africa and internationally. And with the heart of an entrepreneur, McDowell's ability to understand the industry from the inside saw her build public relations-driven marketing campaigns, integrated marketing communications from a zero base in 1991 to 8 million fee turnover by December 2004. I mean, her experience has gone on to include large corporates in banking, manufacturing, with retail sector in the UK and in South Africa, through a 15-year stint with two of the largest advertising agencies in South Africa and a medium-sized agency in the UK. A wealth of experience has brought her to request to various boards, including the Region Essence Advisory Board, MBA Creative Industry, Be the Business Advisory Board member in the UK, Women in Marketing Global Advisory Company. And of course, she's published several times and put out a lot of work out there. And of course, she's currently the managing partner of Scope in Africa, which I have spoken to. Johanna, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for inviting me, Lawrence. Looking forward to this session. Only a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest, Brendan Mngube, a digital transformational leader and industry-renowned marketing executive. Brendan is an award-winning marketer, currently at the helm of Sanlam's Group's digital marketing team. His keen interest is in fintech, digital transformation, technology, and innovation, and has an extensive experience in digital marketing, having positioned himself to connect and be a thought leader in the space, particularly as the content in its marketing sector grapples with effective, innovative digital strategies with long-term sustainability in mind. Before joining Sanlam, Brendan was digital marketing and e-commerce lead, Sub-Saharan Africa at PepsiCo, responsible for all African territories, namely SADC, West, East, Central Africa, rolling out and leading integrated marketing and digital communications and e-commerce agenda for PepsiCo in Africa. And of course, Brendan has in the past, during his 3-year stint also was with the payments technology company Visa previously. Brendan's achievements as marketing director in the digital marketing and e-commerce and integrated marketing and media sub-Saharan Africa region include digital transformation, strategy implementation, creation of social chatbots, banking functionality across 5 countries, resulting in an industry-first initiative in Rwanda through the Atlas Mara Bank Sub-Saharan Africa project. He's been in the game, ladies and gentlemen, for a long time, and some of his key milestones, of course, include the Eco-Mobility World Festival in Johannesburg in 2015, where Brendan was the festival's integrated marketing and innovation head, launching GoTV in Sub-Saharan Africa. That's an exciting one. DSTV's online portals and Zansi Magic launch in South Africa. Absolutely great, exciting project there. Leading the social listening creation team at Nedbank's retail banking and the launch of Nedbank's youth card offering and university org. And of course, creating the team behind ABSA's digital marketing resource center and development of ABSA's mobile and international and internet banking platforms. He holds a master's proudly from Wits Business School, a master's in digital business, and finalized his dissertation on success factors in fintech in South Africa, ladies and gentlemen. His agency achievements, of course, include times in founding head strategist at Native VML Digital Media, Stonehall Media, integrated head of Universal McCann, in charge of the Microsoft Nestle Telecom as clients, and head of Africa strategist at MTN, Nokia, and Coca-Cola. Been around the block, Brendan, ladies and gentlemen. And Brendan, good afternoon. After reading so much of your profile, you're going to have to say something at least. Brendan? Well, he might just not be ready there, but it's okay. I'm sure I'll bring him in as soon as he can. My next guest is born and bred in Soweto. Thulani Sibego is an enthusiastic, collaborative, optimistic, and assertive marketer and a business leader. And since graduating with the BSc in Business Administration Accounting major in 1992, I was reading his story this morning, in actual fact, about his dreams to be a marketer, an accountant, and that those dreams got blown away. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen. He has held various marketing roles across different industries and companies over the past 25 years, including Gillette, Polaroid, Procter & Gamble, Vodacom, Hollard, Nedbank, and is serving as the group executive for marketing, communications, and corporate affairs for Nedbank for 6 years. And then after that, he joined Standard Bank in 2018 as the head of marketing and communications for the group. And since January 2021, Thulani has been the chief brand and marketing officer of the Standard Bank Group, leading the marketing and communications functions across 20 countries, and is the member of Standard Bank's Group Leadership Council, holds an MBA from Henley Business School, a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration for California State University, Sacramento, and a graduate certificate in business studies, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my guests this afternoon. please, you will forgive us. One of our guests couldn't make it. She couldn't make it this afternoon, unfortunately, which we are grateful, however, that these people that have managed to make it this afternoon could afford us the opportunity to share their thoughts and share their mind. Brandon, good afternoon once again. I think I didn't hear you from you. It was great to just welcome you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lawrence. Thanks for having me and the opportunity to contribute. Thanks for having
Absolutely.
me.
Tulani, back to you also. I think I introduced you and I just thought, let me check on Brendan if you was good. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thanks, Lawrence. It's a pleasure to be here and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
To our guests that have joined us, please remember that you can take a moment to ask us questions. The chatbot will be open at exactly just about 5 o'clock. We will open up the chatbot and you'll be able to, on the chat, you'll be able to ask questions. If you are, of course, in a rush and you've got something that is intriguing you, you may already put the questions in. And later on, we will have 30 minutes for questions. We will have a penalty shootout on questions, a 30-second session, as I like to call it, where we ask very short, succinct questions so that we can get good, short answers to those questions. If we can make it that simple, I would really appreciate it. But questions will only be answered after 5 o'clock, if we may. We would really appreciate your patience in that regard. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look back a little bit to some of great campaigns that some people have enjoyed. And I can imagine there are thousands really, but we've just put together a number of ads that might just jog your memory on some great adverts in South Africa. And we'll ask ourselves the question, did they work? Was this great advertising? And why did people enjoy them in South Africa? Let's just show you a couple of clips that you might enjoy.
Coffee and Cremora. Also, Cremora. Where did she put it? She knows I like my Cremora. Now she hides it.
Cremora. Tastes so rich and creamy.
Cremora.
You'd expect to find it in the fridge.
Tandy, there's no Cremora in the fridge.
It's not inside, it's on top.
It's not inside, it's on top.
Cremora, top of the coffee creamers.
I believe in miracles. Where you from? You sexy thing, you. I believe in miracles. Since you came along, you sexy thing. Kiss me, you sexy thing. Touch me, baby, you sexy thing.
Music, sports, games, pictures, and just about everything else comes alive on your phone. Vodafone Live, only from Vodacom.
Rasta. Okay.
Really skinny, pointy ears, and a yellow hat. Police! An unprecedented number of unsolved crimes are overwhelming local police. If you recognize these suspects, please call the crime line.
And this is our most wanted suspect. No.
All right. Well, those are some of the most memorable ads there that some people brought together and they said, this is some of the edges that you like. Sylvester, what's one of your favorite campaigns that you absolutely wish you had done? I know you've done great ads yourself and we're going to come to the ads that you've done. And it might not be one of these that we've played, but when you think back post-independence South Africa, what's one of the ads that comes to mind that you absolutely thought, genius, I wish I just had 2 seconds in that campaign?
I've had so many, over time, because obviously we are surrounded by incredible agencies in South Africa. So we are very spoiled for choice with regards to really, really great creativity. But one of the ads that has always been an amazing North Star for me is an ad by the wonderful agency called King James. A fine agency, really, and they did work for Alan Gray. And this ad features a young boy who's being bullied for having a girlfriend who's seemingly not the prettiest. However, because he's such a fine young gentleman, he's able to be very, very patient. And in fact, in the ad, he says, my papa told me two important things. One is to look for potential, and the other is to be patient. And they were obviously supporting and advertising Ellen Gray. Sorry, I just stopped my phone there. Advertising Ellen Gray, which was phenomenal. It still remains one of my favorite by King James, but also they've done different renditions of it over time, which has proven to showcase creativity, but within a really boring category, but making sure that it lands beautifully. It's always been the best ad for me.
Awesome. And do you find that when you're advertising something that sounds as boring as investments, of course, it's interesting when we enjoy the returns, but as a product, it's not necessarily the most sexiest thing that one jumps up and down to think, I have so much creative space in advertising something as an investment company.
Yeah, and I think that's why the level of creativity, or what needs to be part of the DNA of that particular ad or piece of work, has to obviously transcend just beyond just the traditional sense of product, but it also has to be able to drive the imagination of the customers that they want to get and or that they are keeping. Because it is quite important that, I mean, ultimately, we all know, and we are speaking to business school at the moment, right? So we all know that we have to sell. We all know that we have to drive a product or service. But I think beyond just doing that, we have to do it in a way that is imaginative and exciting. And I think for me, being able to find that link of what makes this product special, but in a way that still links powerfully with the core product or service that you were wanting to deliver is quite important. And I think they do that, and they continue to do that successfully over the years.
Thanks, Sylvester. We'll come back to you just now. Johanna, let's jog your mind a little bit. You've been in the space for a very long time. I'm sure there's an ad campaign that literally, and of course you have managed to review quite a number of advertising campaigns, over the years. And I know recently the agency Scope 2021-22, most respected company, which of course you gave to Nando's, and the best campaign which you gave to Chicken Licken. And in your work that you've been doing for a long time, can you remember in time memorial a great campaign that you thought, geez, I wish I put my hand on that?
Heavens, Gray Phillips. Yes, well, that's a long time ago. I was thinking about it, it's 40 years. I must have started when I was 5. But yeah, I think that, funny enough, that Cremora ad, that wasn't the original one. The very original one is 40 years old. I can still remember when it wasn't a Gray Phillips ad, but I remember when it came out because it was a brand that everybody was watching. And isn't it wonderful how great advertising really lasts? So for me, I think when I think about what makes a great ad, it's a campaign or a commercial that really lasts, and the message just gets reinforced the whole time. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why in agency Scope, the 300 or so marketing professionals and the 200 or so agency professionals that we interviewed, they voted for Nando's as it's a company best for its marketing, and Chicken Licken as the best campaign in the last 2 years. So I found that also quite interesting. Over the last 2 years, the question was, which is the best advertising campaigns and Chicken Licken came up. And they've really succeeded in developing a theme, developing a voice, developing a sound. There are so many ingredients. It's the music, it's the voices, it's the tonality. Those are the things I think that people, generally consumers, they don't know that maybe that's what's happening, but advertising agencies and marketers look for the kind of continuity that will ensure their brand is embedded in the culture. That's really what it's about.
Thank you so much for those insights, Johanna. Thulani, let's also jog your mind a little bit to some of the great campaigns that you have enjoyed. And I'd love to hear your own thoughts on why you thought they probably were a success in that way.
Well, it is true that we've been spoiled for choice in South Africa, as Sylvester said. There's just been so many great campaigns. But the one that comes to mind for me is the Telkom, it's one of those classic commercials that was just an all-time favorite And when I look back at that campaign, there's a few things that stand out for me. Firstly, it powerfully connects a problem that a customer is trying to solve with what the product or service is going to provide. This was about connectivity in terms of installing landlines beyond, the cities and into the rural areas. But more importantly, it speaks to the human truth of the power of connections. You see this beautiful gentleman that daily, just shouts out greetings to the neighbor. Just the warmth and the emotions that come with that, which is another key ingredient of ads that connect, is the emotional value. And then memorability, it's hard to pick because it's not made up of one thing. But it had those things that just made it memorable, that for years to come, it just stands out as one of our best campaigns in South Africa. So yeah, for me, locally, Telkom Molo Mhlobo Wam
was a great one. And what would you think of in your own experience from an international perspective? You just mentioned locally, so my mind instantly jumped to thinking perhaps you might have something in your mind that you probably thought, you would have wished to have done on an international market.
Yeah, I think the one that stands out among many internationally was the metro trains in Australia. They did the campaign Dumb Ways to Die. That, when I saw that, was like, wow, this is genius. They took a societal problem, not the most exciting, serious and boring, and instead of addressing it in a way that would come across as nagging, they developed this song and they showed different ways of, dying in a stupid way, like poking a bear or all those types of things. And then in the end, they talked about other ways that are dumb ways to die, like standing on the platform in front of the train or crossing the rail tracks without being cautious, which is what they were trying to address. So the way they approached a serious subject and just went out of the norms and conventions and adding music, using animations, I thought it was just genius in the way they did this. Yeah, so Dumb Ways to Die was one of my favorites.
Awesome. Let's see if we can find it. It'll be great to see it. I'm sure we can find it on YouTube or something. We'll play it in a moment, Jayton. If we can find it, it'll be great to do so. Brennan, over to you. Maybe some memorable ads on your site. Let's just open-minded and why you think they probably worked as far as you're concerned.
I think from my end, I share the same sentiment in terms of a memorable ad as the Alan Gray ad that Sylvester mentioned. But from my perspective, if you look at the South African society at that time, we had just come out of a period of a lot of hurt and pain. And the conversation at the time was around how do we heal? How do we get our identity back? And they managed to find a link between the true African cultural being versus what they're trying to sell as a product in terms of investments, etc., and find that linkage. So honestly speaking, it's an ad that, first of all, tugged at the heartstrings, which is the motive. And to be honest, it got everyone to smile for the first time in a long time. And that's how you get into the hearts and minds of the consumer, by getting them to smile. Then on top of that, you overlay what you're trying to communicate and message across. So I found that that ad is one of the first test cases in terms of how do we speak to a nation that's coming out of a period of hurt and moving into a period of, I can say, progress as a nation, as Black people, as coming together, etc., but tying it back to what their true cultural beliefs are, not ridiculing amalobolo or any cultural norms, but telling the world that it's okay to be a South African. It's okay to have your traditions and respect them. And it's okay to progress and draw a line between what you're trying to do as an individual, grow, etc. So that's one of the key ads where I found that was, I think, was a turning point in the advertising world, that people could speak to Africans and talk about their cultures in a positive way and show that it is positive to be African. It's positive to teach your children from a young age their culture, but at the same time, teach them things that were never a norm in the African space before: investments, SI trading, etc. And that's how I think was one of the greatest ads for me. It wasn't, we had moved past the stage of getting people to sing and dance and making us smile because of singing and dancing, but make people smile because of something emotive and relatable. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, you've just touched on something interesting, which is starting point of anything, right? Which is understanding the consumer. Before you put out an ad, you want to understand, because is the South African consumer in a way more accustomed to a certain type of advertising, which seems to work? And I'll give you an example. We seem to be humorous society by any means, are we not? Sometimes it looks like humor is simply one of the easiest ways to catch South Africa, and it's the one thing that we all have across. Would that seem to be something that we find to be successful across most ads in the other advertising landscape, Brendan, maybe?
I think in the South African concept, right, context as well, humor was a coping mechanism to deal with the pain. So humor was a way we found to deal with what was happening in the country, and advertising has lashed onto that, and humor has become a successful way to communicate, but it's not the only way to communicate. Only now we're getting to a point where we're figuring out what is the psychographic behavior, what is the behavior of the South African consumer and mindset and reception to advertising. And then that's when we're starting to explore different avenues on how to land advertising. So humor is a great way to communicate, but we've moved past the people, and I think advertising agencies and insights agencies are now getting to the point where they're starting to understand the consumer more, that yes, it was a coping mechanism, but it's not the only way to communicate to the South African consumer. And that's a great way where we're starting to understand what's going on. Yeah.
Sylvester, you are one of the greatest, I almost say enforcers of the humor. In your time at Nando's, that's one of the angles that you brought into the conversation. Humor, until now, that identity has not left, even after you've left there for a long time. What was your own analysis of the South African consumer at that time? And what made you think, let's be topical? Sometimes humor is it, but the Nando's brand became topical. In other words, as issues happened, it almost felt like they were using the advertising space and using the brand for social commentary.
I think social commentary has always been a foundation for Nando's, and the work that was done my time at Nando's by Hunt Lascaris, TBW Hunt Lascaris at the time, set an incredible foundation for bringing the Nando's brand creative element through its advertising. And I think to be honest, it was always at the time a necessary thing to do because of the budget challenge, right? Because you have little money from a budget perspective, how do you then break through? Because you don't have the big budgets that the big competitors in your category have. So one way of doing that at the time was about how do we cut through so that when our ad is out, it's actually much more impactful and it creates conversations much more than obviously if it's just sort of like stock standard and sort of boring. So the element of creativity and in that way and that cheekiness and the ability to bring a level of humor was so different to the category. So it gave Nando's that extra boost and oomph to be able to take its very limited budgets and make it really that much more engaged. But I must say, as a proponent of creativity and humor, I think that humor can add a lot more. But it's not just about humor per se, but it's about a reward. So a reward that leaves you, laughing, smiling, feeling warm and fuzzy, or thinking, oh my goodness, I want to be part of that, or I wish I, was part of that. So I think the idea of a reward is very important. And from a Nando's perspective, we always wanted to make sure that there is a reward for watching our ads, there is a reward for whatever we're saying, because it really does tickle you in one form or another.
So if I went the route that you probably introduced at that time, in the Nando's route, let me bring Thulani first before, and I'm going to come back to you. Thulani?
I just want to build on what Sylvester has said, touching on also what Brandon said. I think humor on its own, if it doesn't relate to the brand, can be a vehicle that is overused without effect. The humor of Nando's is very different from the humor of Vodacom during the Yebo Gogo times. Each eventually becomes a signature of the brand and is core to what the brand is trying to achieve. And I don't think it's just a South African thing. Many countries, humor is just one of many currencies. And I would further add to say, ultimately for me, I see humor as one of many building blocks to connect emotionally. And it's just one of many, and it needs to be used very consciously, very deliberately, knowing that just to be funny for the sake of being funny, as Sylvester says, the social commentary was at the core using humor as a vehicle. Thanks.
All right, awesome. Johanna, yourself, what do you think? The usage of humor and some sense of activism also in advertising, have you found it to be perhaps effective in a way, or controversial?
Yeah, it definitely is, and a controversial topic. As everybody else was talking, I was thinking about a particular ad a global ad. It's for MasterCard, and it's all about know your name. And that MasterCard was the first, or Visa, I can't remember which one it was, to allow transgender people to have their credit card in their chosen name as opposed to their original name. So the commercial itself is a highly emotional one because the person is clearly used to be a girl but is now a boy, but people are still addressing him as a girl, and so that kind of work addresses a societal issue. It is highly emotional because everybody feels quite strongly about that kind of issue, but it also was handled, that particular commercial was handled in such a gentle, soothing way as to make people feel very empathetic and sympathetic to the situation. So that's how great advertising can really make an impact, but it is through the use of emotion, gently done, but very deep, actually, very deep.
Sylvester?
Yes, I actually love what Johanna just spoke about, because I think that, considering the people in this room or currently, it really is about social, engagement, right? Because at the end of the day, we all don't want to just create ads just for the sake of it, right? And we all don't want to just sort of try to sell our brands to people in however way possible. And I do think that there's something powerful when we are commenting on what's happening in our country, in our society, and being able to create those conversations that allow for people to look at the brand, but also look at the brand in relation to the community which it's serving. And currently, Nando's has a campaign that's called They. And it's really challenging the whole idea of pronouns, which I think is brilliant, right? Because it's exactly that. Still link, what's happening, but also doing so in a way that is reflective of the conversations that we are all having in the boardrooms at home with our friends. Because if we're not doing that as marketers, then what are we adding, to the space? And I think since we are speaking to business school, it really is about what can we bring in terms of creating this culture of advertising in South Africa or on the continent that also really does play homage and focus on what's happening with our society and how we can elevate our society as much as possible, or educate them, engage them, so that we are utilizing our brands also to sell, but also to really, really bring people along with regards to all the things that are happening. And I really believe that doing that as marketers helps the entire value chain of advertising, but it also engages our consumers much more, and also being respectful of the fact that they are also evolving as much as the world is changing as well.
And do you find, Sylvester, that South Africa's advertising agencies and brands are willing to push boundaries a little bit? And I'm seeing Dr. Anda Vilakazi, thank you so much for the comment that you put here. And she reminded of the Old Spice, the man your man could smell like, risky pushing boundaries, but they nailed it. Do you find that generally South Africans are comfortable with boundaries that sort of get pushed, right? Because that advert, when I literally saw it, the Nando's ad you spoke about, I was like, I caught it the first time, what it was about. Literally two things. A brand has just pushed through an issue, a very important issue, and at the same time, I can remember it's a Nando's ad, right? Which is very important. Do you find that South African consumers take that well in general?
I think there's a conversation around both the consumer, but also the marketers and the value chain as well. I do think that personally, I do feel that in some level we're also getting a little bit conservative as an industry, because I think there are moments where the boundaries were much more push than currently. On the one hand, with regards to consumers who complain about simple things, as an example. But then you have the value chain as marketers who are really, challenged, I suppose, because they have to manage quite a number of different moving pieces. And of course, Tulani and Johanna would talk to that. And that also has led a lot of people, a lot of marketers to be incredibly safe and incredibly vanilla. So it's not really that creative anymore. And it almost has a tone that the businesses are used to, that tone and that ability to deliver that communication in that way. And marketer after marketer after marketer, we all sort of continuing in that tone. Is it creative? Is it pushing the boundaries? And of course, in this context as business school, I think the question is that, are we really adding and pushing the creative lever as creators of this work, so that we can be able to inspire our consumers to move along with us as well? I think that's really the thing for me. So your question, are we pushing boundaries? I think we can do more. I really think that we can do more. When we look at advertising today, or it's actually, when a good ad comes, it's such a breath of fresh air. It's so exciting and everybody talks about it. But 90% of that is really bad. It's very, very bad work. And you see a lot of very vanilla work, and then a lot of work that is not really necessarily pushing boundaries.
Sylvester, just hold your thought there. You've hit it and you said it's bad work. And we're going to come back to the simple definition of what is bad work in terms of advertising. We have to discuss that, because if we talk about the nice things and we don't talk about what is bad work, without naming brands, of course, we don't want to get slapped. We don't want to be someone who just walk on stage and give us a slap. So we'll come back with that. Let's bring Johanna in, and then Tulani will come to you. Then after that, we're going to play a controversial ad by Nando's, which was by some standard banned, some would say. Well, of course, banned in Zimbabwe for one reason or another, and in a couple of places. But Johanna, you wanted to say something before we get to that.
Lawrence,
Yes.
Tulani had his hand up before me. So
before you. There we go. Tulani, there we go.
Oh, that's very kind. Thanks, Johanna. As I was listening to Sylvester, and I just want to reinforce the importance of originality and creativity in advertising. Although we know it, we don't work as hard at it as we ought to. And secondly, I know we keep referring to South Africans. I mean, your brand, your category has a different take of a slice of South Africans. And for me, it's important that while there might be dominant psyches, there's just so much room across the landscape of South Africa. And when talking about originality, an Apple campaign comes to mind, the one, Get a Mac.
Yeah.
it was very much a Mac versus PC. And in the way that they did it, I thought was just brilliant. I don't know how many people old enough to remember some of these campaigns, but in the one about viruses, you have one guy who is obviously a PC user. He's just coughing and sneezing and complaining about a virus and flu, and he's trying to warn this other guy about, you know, the effects of viruses. And the Mac guy is so chilled because viruses are such a foreign concept to a Mac.
Yeah.
It is such a powerful comparison, and yet it doesn't talk the category language, so to speak, but it talks human speak in a way that is relatable and yet being central to the brand. So the issue of originality, I just wanted to reinforce how critical it is and how we've become lazy and we settle for the quickest solution that we get instead of pushing the boundaries that we could. Thanks.
Absolutely. Johanna?
So my comment was really going to be around the comment you made, Lawrence, about pushing boundaries and are agencies pushing boundaries enough? I think agencies will always push boundaries. What they need are marketers who will allow them to, and in fact will encourage them to. And it's something that even Tulani talked about a couple of weeks ago in the masterclass we had. What agencies look for in the ideal client, okay? And one of the reasons why Nando's, for example, is so popular, even Chicken Licken is so popular, is because that marketer, those marketers in those organizations want extreme advertising. They want to encourage it. They want to develop it in a category that could be actually very ordinary. So in order to improve standards, in order to get great advertising all the time, the ideal combination of the marketer who is prepared to take risks, which is tricky in an economy where budgets are falling, and you know, when you've just got to keep going, but an agency will always respond very well to that. It's harder, we're in the agency selection business, it is harder to appoint an agency and then push them to do great creative work. What you want is an agency who will always want to do great creative work, and if you just got to pull them back a little bit as a marketer, so be it. But that's the best way the partnership works.
Thank you so much, Johanna. Let's take a commercial break, and we're going to have a look at a Nando's ad, which I spoke about earlier, and let's talk about pushing boundaries, and let's have it ask ourselves, was it effective? Is this good advertising or otherwise?
We thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever and a day. We live the life we choose. We'd fight and never lose. For we were young and sure to have our way.
No one should ever have to eat alone. So get a Nando's 6-pack meal for 6.
All right, Brennan, let me bring you to this one. If you are ZANU-PF, you don't like that advert, and you ban it, of course. That was the natural response that came from the other side of the border on this one. Do you think the ad got to be effective either way at that point? Or do you think it's a case of advertising must not offend some people? Because if I'm a true blood ZANU-PF or Mama Gaddafi, you know, loving African, I might just be thinking, what nonsense is this? I'm not going to buy Nando's. I'm going to get Chicken Licken.
Yeah, I think when you look at it from that perspective, I think Nando's have taken the stance in terms of what their brand stood for bringing to light social ills, etc. But if I can draw parallels to William Shakespeare's work, when he used to bring in scenes of comic relief in his tragedy plays. Comic relief was meant to bring in, for example, you've got the grave digger scenes in Hamlet, etc. Those were used to translate the complexity of the day to the ordinary man on the consumer so that they understood what was going on. That ad, in my eyes, was Nando's bringing comic relief to that particular situation in Zimbabwe, and in particular situation to Africans as a whole, so that they could translate the complexity of what the current environment is, etc. So from my perspective, that ad worked from an effective point of view in terms of being able to speak to the consumer about what is happening in the current day, but also work from a brand perspective, that the brand drew a parallel between themselves and what the consumer was going through, and showing the brand and the consumer that they understood one another. So that's where it was quite an effective ad, and you can't please everyone. And at the end of the day, but if you note that when you're talking about comic relief, you're talking truisms. And it was a truism that was reflected in the play of the day, which was the Nando's ad. And that's why I would say that was highly effective from that end.
Let me ask Sylvester, Tulani, I'll come to you just now. In actual fact, let me leave Sylvester because he's the culprit in this case. So let's go to Tulani. Tulani, your view of that ad, what comes to your mind before Sylvester then has to, give us a sense of what was the objective of the campaign and why he signed off on it somewhere.
Yes, I can't wait to hear Sylvester speak. In terms of the ad, I thought it was hilarious. And the big question I have is one that was raised by Dr. Ayanda, that in a lot of instances, we see the ads and how we respond to them emotively, but not always knowing how we responded in terms of actions, which at a primary level is to persuade the audience to want the product or the service. That campaign, I thought it was funny. I thought it was irreverent. What I wonder is, how did it do relative to what were the objectives also? Because I prefer to judge it on the objectives that were set out. So I'd be curious if indeed Sylvester has the inside scoop.
Sylvester, you give us a masterclass in a minute of what are the objectives? What are the objectives with that campaign? And why did you think, you know what, we're going to strike gold just by going in this direction ultimately?
I think the important point to first contextualize is the fact that Nando's has been a social commenter for a big part of its history. So it was not new for Nando's to be talking about something related to politics. It's spoken to the ANC Youth League, it's spoken to ANC, it's spoken to COBE and COSATU. And the idea of commenting on what's happening in the country is a very, very important part of Nando's DNA, in that the work must be relevant to the context in which it's advertising at the time. Creatively, it was about breakthrough of making sure that there's an understanding, because remember at the time as well, there's been a lot of political conversations around what's happening on the continent, leadership on the continent, So I think a lot of it was really based on being able to take a bit of a slice on a brand's take on what was going on. So it was luckily, and I'd say luckily, because Nando's client and the people at Nando's are bold people. The leadership is a bold leadership. They love creativity, and they really are advocates for creativity in all its form. And I think that when you have, to Johanna's point, an agency that is wanting to push the boundaries, and then you have a client who's really, really willing to say, that's the one, let's go for it. It makes us nervous, but it's worth going for. It's then something that really then leads you to great work. So it's won Grand Prix, it won many, many awards, this piece of work. So at a creative level, it definitely has worked. From a brand perspective, there were two things. The one was the fact that, yes, South Africans understood Nando's for what it was, and of course, and how it communicated. But there was also other parts of the continent who maybe may not know Nando's in the way that South Africans do. Hence the issue in Zim with regards to the closure, potential, as well as, it being banned and of course being removed. So there was a big lesson there for us all around that. As we operate in a Pan-African environment, we ought to be sensitive to the fact that while South Africans might find it really humorous and exciting, you also have businesses in other parts of the continent who may find the work really, really, really odd. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, a great explanation, and it's good to hear that. Johanna, I want to bring you to this occasion, into the discussion. One of the things that Sylvester spoke about is, I can imagine when you bring such a brief, or you brief it, your agency, and you're thinking of something this controversial, which brings you to the next question. How do I choose a great agency, and say, this is the agency I'm going to work with? What are some of the factors that a marketer should be thinking about in terms of bringing an agency that probably understands the brand or gives them the output, that they're looking for?
Well, look, the kind of things that there are the hard issues. So like the capabilities. What is that agency's? What can it do? Does it have the capability to do all the things that I need it to do? And it's really important to check all of that, because unfortunately, some agencies might say they do have those capabilities, but they don't really, or they might be outsourcing them. So for me, the first thing is you have to look at the capabilities. Geography plays a role, even though we've worked in this remote way for a couple of years. We know, and clients have told us, marketers have told us, they want to see their team. They want to have their team in front of them from time to time. And as we return to normality now, that's going to be increasingly important. So geography plays a role. Then the other thing that really happens, and this is the key to creativity in many ways, the chemistry. The chemistry between the marketer and the agency is critical. Now, we've just been doing, in the last few days, in fact, we've been doing chemistry sessions with a number of shortlisted agencies in advertising and a client. And the idea of chemistry is not, will they like each other and is everybody going to laugh and have a joke? No, that's not what chemistry is. Chemistry is about being the ability to get on and to have good conversation, to be able to ask challenging questions of each other in order to be able to develop a relationship and to really spark the best out of each other. So those are the softer issues, but for me, those things are actually as important as all the capabilities, the size of the agency, the team, the history that they've had. There's a huge preoccupation in South Africa with agencies wanting to win awards, and yes, that's important. I think it's overstated. I mean, when I go to international forums, for example, I'll be doing so in New York, I'll be seeing maybe 30 agencies in a week. Not one of those international agencies will talk about how many awards they've won. It'll be a housekeeping note at the end. It won't. So
it's a pissing concert inside. It's a pissing competition in South Africa, but there's absolutely nothing to it. The agency awards, really.
It's important for the people who work in the agencies. There's no question about it. But what marketers tell us is that yes, those things are important, but what they want to know about is effectiveness. And they also want to know that the agency has a good business understanding. So if an agency understands your business, they are much better equipped to come up with great campaigns. They are not well equipped just because they've won awards in the past. So those kind of things to think about.
Thanks for that insight. Thanks for the insight, Johanna. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, please start putting them on the chat board. I'd love to get your questions soon. In the next couple of minutes, I'm hoping to wind down, and then we'll move on to your questions. Thulani, I want to bring you in on this one. Have you had a chance to get rid of an agency for any reason or another? And what will be your reasons to getting rid of an agency? And you just say, look, you know what? Not it, not it.
Yeah, I was happier with the earlier, easier question. How did we get to the difficult one? Firstly, I'll reinforce some of the points that have been made in terms of what makes a great agency. And by reverse, hopefully we can deduce what ends up breaking the relationship. One of the key things is creativity matters. There is evidence and research that confirms that creative communication works harder than bland communication. So for me, creativity matters. The quality of people in the agency makes
for a major brand.
The quality of the people in an agency makes a huge difference on what the agency can produce.
Yeah.
And the understanding of the business, just to reinforce Johanna's point, is so fundamental, because creativity that is mislocated and is for its own sake, not related to the business imperatives and what the brand is trying to achieve, is a non-starter. Yeah. So I just wanted to build on that. Now, where relationships sometimes break down is when an agency does not have the courage and conviction of their ideas. Because agency and client should complement each other, bringing their different expertise. And Sylvester alluded to it earlier, and Johanna may have touched on it also, that part of the challenge that we have is that indeed, as clients, we don't give enough space for the agencies to really, thrive in the expertise that they bring. So once they get to the space where what is expected of their best is not forthcoming, then it becomes difficult to keep extracting value that is limited. Yeah. Also, the erosion of talent, as I've alluded earlier, can be a major problem. When you get to a point where the best talent is just constantly on the exit, yes, is the work that suffers as a result. Yeah. There's many reasons why the relationship can break down. And I also know of agencies that fire clients. So the breakdown can happen both ways. And it's about people knowing, what they are about and what their expectations are, and lines that cannot be crossed. Values would be another thing that may result in the breakdown of a relationship. I'll stop there for now.
Sylvester, you're running an agency now. You've been a client before. You've briefed. Perhaps you've been fired. Who knows? In a couple of years that you've been in. Any reasons why you were fired?
Well, actually, I wanted to add first regarding what is important with regard to some of the things that makes a great agency. I just thought that was quite important because the South African advertising industry or as a whole is highly untransformed. And so when you look at it quite closely, there is a challenge with regards to the reflection of the audience and the understanding of our people. And I think great agencies have a much better understanding of that, and better understanding of the audience that we are dealing with. They've got an understanding of the challenges, and maybe through that, great insight can come out of that to then lead to creative work. And I find that many times we sort of glance over this issue of transformation as in the industry, because it's an area that is a big problem. So as we speak into business school here, when you do get into the zone, be able to make a difference, be able to make sure that we are assisting to really bring this industry to a much more diverse and much more inclusive environment than what it currently is. And I think that is quite important. We have 5 clients for, I suppose, relationship and understanding their expectations, because sometimes it does happen that the expectation of what the client is looking for and what we can give them, they are misaligned. And they could misalign by many reasons, because the reason that a client is getting an agency is not to just get people that they can order to do what they want when they want. Absolutely. Because then the relationship is not really able to be honest and fair, and that we're not able to really kind of fight to get great work, but we fight to keep egos and fight to keep, to make people happy. And that's very difficult to win with an agency client relationship that is like, that is that way. Yes.
Thanks, Sylvester. Let's bring in Brandon. Brandon, I was going to ask you something anyway before you come in, and you probably will comment on this, and then if you may, just answer to my question before I jump onto the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you've got any questions, let's spoil them inside the chat board so that we can, get to your questions soon. Katlego, I see your question, and I've got one more question. Brandon, I was going to ask you, and once you make your comment now, I was also going to ask you of a very simple issue here. You work in the digital space largely. And in South Africa, there's a great digital divide. The simple reality is that not everyone has a smartphone and not everyone has internet access. And with the growth of digital advertising, do you think that we are therefore advertising find itself almost in an elitistic environment, especially when you speak to digital advertising?
Okay, cool. I think before I answer that, just to add on Sylvester's point as well, I think the other question would be what makes a great client? And one of Sylvester's points was transformation. As there is no transformation, or not a large extent of transformation in the advertising area, there's also a lack of transformation within the client side. So what you find is that as a marketer, what makes a great client is a client that is brave, a client that can then speak up the line to his boss and his boss's bosses and talk about relatability of people, of South African people versus the corporate environment, and sell that story and be strong in their position and conviction in terms of what works best to communicate to the market. So what, as equally was saying, what makes a great agency? What makes a great client? A great client, you need to be very brave to make those decisions and have those tough conversations within corporate South Africa. First of all, making sure that it's a balancing act between preserving yourself and your job versus fighting for what's right. Yeah. That is what needs to be done. That's the tough decision that's happening as a corporate marketer in South Africa in 2020. So always bear that in mind. Yeah. When it comes to digital marketing, there's a place for everything. South Africa is going through a digital transformation phase, and what you find from a digital marketing perspective, there's digital maturity. And with that, the advertising and marketing channels still play a particular role. There's a big hammer approach that traditional marketing and above the line marketing will always play: wide reach, wide engagement. Digital can be used as a precision tool. And as a precision tool, that's from the lower end consumer, that's when you get the specific call to actions and reactions that you need out of your marketing. The world is progressing where there's cheaper access to data, cheaper access to smartphones. And then you have a large part of the population currently that does not have access to data or those smartphones, but there's a way to engage with them. The various technologies that are coming into play. For example, there's zero-rated services where you can go through USSD platforms, etc., as well as zero rating, for example, your corporate websites, or zero rating your social channels, so that those without access to data and entry-level devices can actually access the platform that you want to communicate to. So the world is changing and evolving at such a huge pace that all communication, digital communication, becomes ubiquitous and easier to access. So it's just how we're moving along that transformation curve as South Africa, and I think we're moving at that quite an exponential rate. And in the end, the field is going to be leveled in terms of how we communicate to all consumers within a digital space, with the key message being messaging and communication, not necessarily platform anymore.
Yeah. So that's essentially it. As the country reduces this digital divide, there will be greater opportunities in terms of digital marketing ultimately. Thank you so much, Brendan. Colleagues, let us take some questions. People want to put their questions. And I want to take the first question that has come from my colleague, Kimantha Govender. And she's speaking especially in higher education ads, for example. How do you feel about stock images in print? And I know we're talking largely, we've used TV ads because it's easier on this kind of platform. But what's your thoughts around stock images? Sylvester, you come from an agency side. What's your thought? You know, if someone said, hey, I like the bane of my existence. I saw somewhere else.
It's the bane of my existence. And in fact, I think, I'm sure Tulani, if you look at the banking category as a whole, we're all using the same stock images, we're all sharing the same thing, and it's a big challenge. And I think that also is an indictment, I suppose, on our creative community in being able to galvanize together to really, really ensure that we're able to get our own stuff. I think that's the issue, is that we only are able to get the images that are captured by other people, and therefore we are reflecting the US, Europe, etc., and not so much that is being done to reflect, local. We now, with our clients, we really do propose and quite often successfully being able to ensure that we find and shoot our own things, because it's important that in part of differentiating yourself as a brand, that you also are spending enough on assets that are truly yours and that you can be able to use successfully.
Awesome. Okay, this is a penalty shootout now. Tulani, I'm not sure which team you support. I'm a Liverpool fan, and I think the best penalties I've ever seen was between Liverpool and Chelsea. So it's going to be quick and everyone takes and make sure they score the goal. I'm going to throw in next question, and you can comment on what Sylvester has done, but you've got to comment on my next question, coming from Kuliso Mnisi, who asked, where do you see the future of traditional advertising, given the rise of influencer marketing, which seeks to achieve the same point to sell the product? So you can make a comment, and then the issue of influencer marketing. I know we had an event we had a full talk on influencer marketing and its growth. What's your thinking around the future of traditional marketing?
Thank you. So I'll start by building on Sylvester's point. One of the key things of great advertising is also production values. And stock advertising stock material does not do much for production values. The other key thing is resonance, where people can see themselves in what is being portrayed. And stock footage tends not to do that very well. And then lastly, being targeted in ensuring that the message and the visuals, they're like, inseparable. That cannot be achieved with an image that pre-existed the idea and the message. So I'll leave it there. Yeah. Where to in terms of traditional advertising? I must admit that the death of TV has been pronounced for such a long time, and it has outlived the pronouncements. I really think that different forms of advertising and channels will continue for a while to come. It's just the degree of the mix that they will make up for different brands and categories, depending on who you're speaking to and otherwise. So I still think that traditional forms, especially TV and radio in the context of South Africa, there's still long miles to run in that space. Of course, digital is exploding, rightly so, with the penetration of devices, and as Brendan has alluded, the increased access because of cost and so forth. So I wouldn't rule out anything. Let's allow consumers to be reached in their preferred choice, and in some cases, not even a preference, it's what they only thing they have, and reach them according to those. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't know if you saw some controversies this weekend, my guests. There was an advert on the Sunday Times by MTN, and it had the image of the MTN SA, and of course they wrote his name in the MTN SA. The advert was about their growth of their broadband, if I'm not mistaken. And it went viral on Twitter. And the simple question was it necessary to put the CEO's face there? And what was its real reason? A good thought to think about, perhaps. And of course, the person that put it out there did think it was just a large ego trip. And I'm sure we can always discuss whether or not. Sylvester, you had some comment. Let me take yours. And then after that, I want to go to Johanna. And Johanna, we want to talk about the usage of, we want to talk about how TV is apparently going down, and how does it fit in now that audiences are more on their phone? So we're going to talk about that. Johanna, I'm going to throw that question to you. Just hold on there while Sylvester has something burning in his soul to air out.
Yes, I just wanted to build on the issue around traditional advertising. I must say that it's probably important to note that not all brands that we have are able to advertise on television. They don't have the money, the bandwidth, and the ability to do so, or radio for that matter. So I think depending on the brand life cycle, the size of brand, and particularly the smaller businesses that we are seeing mushrooming all around our continent, there is definitely merit. And what we are seeing on the ground is exactly that digital and ability for digital to be affordable, to be possible, to then advertise and drive your brand utilizing those means is becoming that much more effective as well. So there isn't a case necessarily that says traditional advertising in television is definitely strong and impactful versus digital advertising in this sort of the new way. Yeah. And I think that for brands and for those brands that don't have the budgets and the means to play in that traditional space, digital is still powerful, it's very powerful, it's very cost effective. And we are seeing that build many, many, many big brands right now without utilizing the traditional means of advertising.
Yeah, Brendan, let me bring Brendan in before I bring in my new question, which I'll put to Johanna. Brendan, you had a comment on this one also.
Yeah, just a quick one-liner on that. It's not either-or situation, it's an and situation when it comes to marketing channels. You'll find that we should not forget what the majority of the South African consumer, we're over 50 million people, and how many are below the poverty line. And we should not look at marketing from a sample of one. There's a vast majority of South African consumers without access to digital platforms and communication. There will always be a role for TV, there will always be a role for radio, there will always be a role for outdoor, and there will always be a role for digital. What marketers need to do is to find the appropriate mix for the target audience to reach as many people as possible to see their ad. And that is where the beauty of marketing and the science and art of marketing come into play. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brendan. Johanna, I'm bringing you in here, and attendee here says, obviously, we've played a number of ads here, and most of them were TV ads, obviously to stimulate the conversation. And for some reason, the most memorable ads are those that are flighted before smartphones took over. We're going to do other ads that came after, don't worry. Where does the television ad now fit in the era of audiences being available on so many screens where you can skip ads? People are simply skipping ads. Should I be worried that people can skip my ads and I'm paid a lot of money on a platform?
No, the media guys are smart. So when it comes to these kind of things, you know, the expertise that sits in the media agencies in South Africa, some of the best in the world. And media agency experts know where the audiences are. They know how to ensure that ads are seen, that they aren't skipped. There's no question that digital marketing has grown. I mean, I look at my statistics, and this is what marketers tell us. It's not what agencies tell us. So marketers in 2016 told us they were spending 18.6% of their budget in digital. In 2021, they were spending 37.3%. And that's average, okay? So there are some marketers that are spending way more than that, probably 60 to 70%, to Sylvester's point, and Brandon's. But there are some who are spending far less because it's all about the audience, and it's all about where your consumers are. And Brandon makes a very good point. Radio is still massive in this country because we have to reach so many people. SABC TV, people think that TV is dying. Not at all. SABC TV has big audiences and they look after them. So yeah, there's a role for all the media. The trick now is how to reach your audience because it's so fragmented, which means that the quality of your creative work has got to be even better than it was 20 years ago when it was frankly pretty easy to create a great ad and run it in, you know, we had about what, 4 channels, I can't even remember. These days it's about what's happening and how are you communicating across all of these channels in a way that will reach your audience, but your audience for that brand.
Absolutely. Well, we'll take an ad break and we're going to go through a Sanlam ad. Of course, Brendan is with Sanlam. We're going to take an ad break and look at a Sanlam ad, and then we're going to answer a question that Medupi puts out. He says, what is the panel's view on internationalization of creative messaging in advertising when agencies trying to reach a global audience by ignoring local context? And Brendan, I know you have worked in the past couple of years with international companies, been at Visa, been at PepsiCo. What happens when you are told this is the ad for every market in the world? Because it's World Cup or it's AFCON, you got to play it in every part of the world. So let's take an ad break and then we'll come back. And Brendan, I'll start with you on that issue of internationalization of creative.
No problem.
In the game of life, one important thing can increase your chance of success. Confidence. Confidence is the game changer.
Confidence! Where do I find that, Jose?
First rule, you need a goal.
I don't play soccer.
Nice color.
Right?
But not that kind of goal. What do you want from life?
Happiness.
Success.
Checkmate.
Less worries.
Next, you need a strategy.
I gotcha. Like a game plan.
Exactly. Put in the work and stick to it. Nothing pays better. Trust me. Then you need to be patient.
How patient?
More patient, success cannot be hurried. And most important of all, you need the right team behind you. Do all these things and you will have the financial confidence to achieve anything.
Anything?
And everything, my friend.
All right. Sanlam, great ad last year they put out. I told Sidi Mbele that unfortunately, because of my disdain for Jose Moreno, I probably skipped it every time it came on. If you put Jurgen Klopp, then we talk the same language. So that was a great ad that you guys put together. I know you may have joined them afterwards, Brendan. Your thoughts on that one, and then you can share your thoughts on this issue of internationalization of creative work.
Let me start with the internationalization of work. I think we have to look at it from the corporate perspective. That first of all, these are global brands with licenses they've given out throughout the region, and there needs to be economies of scale. If we look at it from playing devil's advocate here, when you're looking at economies of scale, it's scale in terms of production efficiencies. What we work with in FMCG spaces, especially PepsiCo and Visa, is working versus non-working ratios. You need to make your money work as hard as it can for you. So for example, you implement guardrails to say, if you have a budget of 100 Rand, at least 80% or 80 Rand needs to go towards media. And media is defined as a channel enabling the brand to reach as many people as possible to receive the messaging. So if you've got guardrails of 80-20, 20% is left over for production, which means with 20% of 100 Rand, can you really produce an ad? Or can you really produce a piece of content or creativity that is uniform across the nation? Remember, these are global brands. You have Lay's, you have Doritos, you have Visa. Yeah. There needs to be one positioning, one relatability that needs to be in control from that. So that is I would say, the perspective that the brands have. Yeah. When it comes to translating that locally, that is where the art comes in terms of drawing what the global brand or global ad or idea is trying to communicate in the whole world versus its relevance to South Africa. And that's where sometimes the wheels and the rails come off, because you get two types of marketers. There's the lazy marketer who's like, okay, we have a global ad, let's just take it, cut, plug and play, and now they flight it on TV. It has no relevance to the market at all. The trick is finding the marketer who's able to take that global asset and translate it. We throw around the word translation loosely, but that is an art form in itself, to create a new ad using an existing asset that is translatable to the market. To answer the Sanlam ad, I think when you're looking at life and investments, it goes back to my much earlier point about Alan Gray, the competitor, and how they drew relevance in emotive communication to the consumer. With Sanlam, we're talking about living with confidence. As individuals, we now need to get to a point where you are confident about your financial state of being. And how else do we draw relevance to being confident of financial state of being? You use a character, or rather an individual, who has performed with confidence throughout his career and delivered results. ego Jose Mourinho on that. So you're trying to educate the consumer and let the consumer know that it's okay to live with confidence in terms of your finances and develop yourself and grow in that direction. So that's where the overarching thing came from. Yeah.
Absolutely. Johanna, let me give you the next question. The production value, this is Konani's question. Konani says the production value of South African adverts is amazing. How does the ad agency come together with the director to make the client's vision come alive? So you've got your concept and everything. How does everything get cooked up? Perhaps maybe a small 1-minute masterclass on when Tulani says, Standard Bank, we want to do a TV ad, and brings in his agency. How does that all pan out? Just for someone who wants to know the process.
What happens is that the agency will come up with a concept. So the creative department or the creative director, whoever is assigned to the client team, will come up with a concept. Before they present it, if they're wise, they will check with a suitable director what they think of the concept, and if they could produce it, they'll present it to the client, and the client will approve it. Then what happens, most importantly, the agency then starts to work with a production company, and then that's where they start to work with the independent TV directors, TV commercial directors, highly talented individuals who are in their own production companies. That director, the first thing they will do is come up with a treatment, what they call a treatment. So how that concept will actually work step by step in terms of how it will be produced in a television commercial production scenario. And then once that treatment has been approved, only then does the casting start and does the whole pre-production process start. And pre-production is a very, very important part of this, because it's the step-by-step, this is what we're going to do, this is what each scene is going to be, etc., etc. Then the filming actually happens, and then the post-production is where they put in all the titles and the titling, the sound, etc., etc. So that's the process. It's much quicker now than it used to be, but it can still take a long time. It all depends on, is this a massive shoot where it's going to need an overseas location? Is it going to be out of town? Where is it going to be? So location is a hugely important part. What's so interesting about South Africa is that this is one of the favorite destinations in the world for overseas TV companies to come, because we have so much here in terms of scenery. The quality of the production people in these independent production houses is amazing. They are highly skilled people. Obviously, we have a price benefit because of the rand, but also the seasonality. Our seasons here are, particularly in relation to the Northern Hemisphere, our days of sun are so good that it's just less expensive to shoot here, because imagine you have to have weather days in the UK or the US, and those are very expensive. So yes, that's the process.
Thank you so much. Tulani, I'm going to throw this one at Dr. Ayanda Viligas. Puts a question. He says, do the speakers think clients should reward ad agencies based on them meeting business objectives instead of a creativity? If I want to sell 10 widgets and I pay an agency 1 million to help me achieve this, is it fair to reward the agency if I have only sold 1 widget? Is the issue of the client side, is the issue on the client side or the agency side? Maybe let me just take half that question. So Standard Bank, here you are, you've given Sylvester money. Sylvester, this is business banking. We need businesses to sign up. Should I be paying him because he put together a great ad, as we're going to see, or should I be paying him because there is another 10 customers?
Yes, a very interesting question. If we were doing marketing mix modeling every month, then we could pay the agencies for the results. My point is simple. The results that ultimately happen are a combination of different levers, including advertising. And in many instances, the role of the organization's fulfillment in that value creation process also plays a part. So in a perfect world, we would be able to attribute all the drivers that led to that sale, what the relationship manager did, what the product appeal itself did, and what the communication did. In some cases, especially in performance marketing, it's much easier to directly attribute the communication, but it's still not perfect.
Yeah.
So in my humble view, it is not easy and not fair to say the agency should be paid only on what is sold, because the agency is not singularly responsible for the sales.
Absolutely. I will play my last ad break, and a Standard Bank ad, and one that Sylvester was behind, with 2020 was named one of the best advert, in an interesting angle that came to it. And then I'm going to ask all my guests, what is good advertising? What is good advertising and what is bad advertising? Sylvester, you mentioned the bad advert. We're going to conclude with that at the end of it. So let's look at these last two ads, and then we'll come back to finalize our discussion that we've been having.
Dinner time. Not without the farm. Not without water, fertile ground, or machines to plow it. Not without safekeeping, distribution, and a top-up every now and then. Not without the wholesaler, the retailer, or the bank that backs them all. Dinner time. Not without business. Standard Bank. It can be.
All right, let's bring the testic one. Great campaign, I thought to myself. Chetan?
Heritage is about celebrating the spirit of Ubuntu. Without the generosity of others towards my education, I wouldn't be where I am today. This inspired the design of our pack. This Heritage Month, Testic and I invite you to celebrate Ubuntu through little acts of kindness. Umtu, Gumtu, Kabantu.
Brilliant ad. Sylvester, you put together that last one, 2020, absolutely brilliant ad, one of the best ads, according to many people that rated advertising. I want you to conclude this conversation by simple answering the question, what makes great advertising and what is a bad ad?
I think important for me is just the context. And I think understanding the last ad, for example, it was in 2020 during the lockdown. People are really, really looking for a little bit of generosity, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of gifting, and that sort of thing. So the bad ads don't have good understanding of context. So during a really, really somber moment, they go in and becoming happy clappy and weird. We've seen them a lot during lockdown. Remember, where it was just like, you just think, where are these marketers living? Because we're going through the most as a country, and you are selling a car and clothing and fabulousness and drinking and parties. And I think a lot of marketers had to think back about that context, because that was quite important.
Absolutely.
That adds a bad or lack of context. They also are a strategy in an ad. It's almost like you can tell what they were trying to do. And it's become so obvious. It's almost like they've taken the brief from the client and they made it into an ad. And you can see, here's the problem, here's a solution, and this is what we've got for you. It's that sort of very, very basic sort of, we know you want to sell, but do it very differently. I think that's quite important. And then the other thing, Tulani mentioned this as well, production values. The performance of the actors, sometimes they choose a reflection of an older person, but you can see that this is a young person who's not that old, who's been made to be old. So you can see that there's not been a lot of time and effort placed in the performance and the production value of the particular ad. I can go on, but basically everything that is good that we've spoken about, that we love about good ads, the opposite is what makes a bad ad.
Tulani, Nosisa and Larato said, Mohapi says, very emotive, nice one by Standard Bank. Nosisa says, agree about the Standard Bank ad, great ad. You can comment on your ad, of course, the Standard Bank, and then answer in conclusion, what makes great advertising and what's a bad advert?
I think we've talked at length about great ads. I think I'll focus on bad ads.
Yeah.
On production values, bad writing is a guarantee for bad ads. Some of the ads are just disrespectful in their quality. It's just disregard, as if the ad is going to imbeciles. So it's really important that the writing is just top drawer. Also, bad ads don't leave a good feeling. Even if you are humorous, it's better to laugh with your audience than to make a mockery of your audience.
Yeah.
It's not a win. And lastly, I would say resonance. A lot has been said about relevance, but for me, the ultimate prize is resonance. If an ad just lacks connection, you see it and you keep it at a distance and there's just nothing that speaks to you, for me, that's a bad ad. And
Absolutely.
Thanks for the acknowledgements of the Standard Bank ad.
Only appreciate it. Johanna, you're gonna come in here a part of your closing remarks. What's your conclusion on what could be a bad ad or what is great advertising ultimately? Your closing remarks on this one. You're on mute for.
Had to happen once, didn't it? I think great advertising is the advertising we remember, that stays with us, that we like to talk about. Bad advertising for me are the ones that we don't even notice they're so bad. When it comes to print advertising, yeah, I've seen print ads with spelling mistakes in, poor English or poor whatever. It doesn't have to be English.
Disaster.
Spelling mistakes. I mean, it's just terrible. So yes, I think to Lani's point, when you can see that the crafting hasn't been done properly, that to me is a bad ad. And even a great idea, badly executed, can end up being a bad ad. It's such a pity. But for me, great advertising, it's the stuff we remember, it's the stuff we love, it's the stuff we like to talk about, the laugh about, cry about. That's great advertising.
Johanna, thank you so much for your comments. Sylvester, I'll give you, and then Lemuel, Brendan will come through and conclude for us in this discussion. Sylvester, you had a comment that you had in mind.
It's actually a short comment. I just wanted to say, interestingly, based on the conversation that we've had around what makes great advertising, then the question I have is, why then do we have so much bad advertising? I think that's something to think about as scholars of the craft, right? Because clearly we're saying that ad has got bad resonance or production values that are bad, etc. But there are people who see that as being good advertising or that it meets the mark or etc. So I think it's important then for us all to be able to elevate the entire value chain by ensuring that we're all learning what makes a great ad in unison, so that we then don't find ourselves in a situation where a good ad is almost an anomaly amongst a sea of really bad ads. So all of us as the professionals within the space, it's up to us to really keep elevating and pushing what makes great advertising and discussing it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Sylvester, for your contributions today. Brendan, let's bring you in here. What is an effective ad and what's an absolutely bad ad in conclusion?
Yeah, but I think quickly, as most of the speakers have pointed out, I think my closing remarks would be good and bad are relative to your environment and who you are. But what makes a good ad is how it stays and how it sticks, its stickability in terms of how people speak about it, relate to it, and how it achieves its ultimate goal at the end of the day. Because there's a good ad from a consumer's point of view when you're looking at it from a creative point of view, but there's also a good ad from the brand point of view, which has objectives and return on marketing investment. The key to make a good ad is having that key balance between the return from the marketing investment as well as the light that it's seen in the consumer's eyes. I think a bad ad, as Johanna said as well, does not stay at all, is not remembered, and evokes negative feelings from it, whether it's positive or negative feelings, whether it's bad words, but a bad ad is creativity that doesn't stick. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your contributions, Mr. Brandon Lemuel Nube from Sanlam. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate the insights. Sylvester Chauke, thank you so much for those great insights, and your work speaks for itself over many years. We really respect that and appreciate it. Thulani, running an absolutely great and awesome brand. And obviously you have continued to do well in terms of Standard Bank brand and international brand in every way. Really thank you for your insights and taking your time out to share those, those nuggets. Johanna McDowell, thank you so much once again for years and years of experience. I know we tried to comprehend literally all your years of experience in just an hour of conversation, but I can only imagine what a conversation with you and many things that you've seen from the times of, analyzing ads and probably what you've looked at in terms of the lorries and other things. We really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, for more of this, of course, the idea is for you to possibly consider joining our Master of Management in Strategic Marketing, which is a 2-year degree program that the Wits Business School hosts in January, which our intakes have already begun. And you can probably learn a little bit more, and hopefully we can bring some of these great people to come and also showcase some of the learnings that they have made over the years. We do, and we are open to many more conversations. If you would like to be a guest speaker, I know that's always a dangerous play to ask because, a lot of people nowadays are content producers and all sorts of things. But if you would like to, if you would like to contribute in some of our Wits Business School discussions, or you have a topic, we will gladly love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us, and I'll obviously call you my email address there. And let's be able to create conversations. Let's grow each other as marketing, as we grow the marketing industry in South Africa. It's been a great afternoon. Once again, a big appreciation to Dr. Sayini, the marketing team led by Rutendo Numalo. Behind the scenes, Jayton, thank you so much. Always you're doing a great job. Tembeka Sletwayo, also in marketing and events, who has put this together. Big appreciation. Our communications team, Flow Communications, really appreciate it. My name is Lawrence Thulani Dube. It's been a great afternoon. Have yourself an awesome evening, and let's keep making our craft better in as far as marketing is concerned. Thank you so much. Have yourself an awesome, awesome evening, and of course, a life.
Thank you, Lawrence.